5 teenagers were lying unconscious beside a swimming pool, leaving the firefighters stunned. How did this girl nearly get all 5 of her friends killed? Not long ago, she was making ice cream with liquid nitrogen. After seeing the thick fog it created, she thought pouring it into the pool would turn the backyard into a magical wonderland. So she invited her younger brother and several friends over for a pool party. The effect was better than expected. It knocked everyone out. When firefighters learned she had poured several containers of liquid nitrogen into the pool, even they were shocked. This kid really took things too far. Based on what happened, firefighters realized the nitrogen had displaced the oxygen around the pool, causing everyone to suffocate from oxygen deprivation. After treatment, one of the teenagers woke up first. Then her younger brother suddenly coughed up a mouthful of water and regained consciousness. The girl was overjoyed, but her brother angrily started yelling at her.
I'm never letting you talk me into anything ever again.
One by one, the remaining kids also regained consciousness. The firefighters finally breathed a sigh of relief, but then a loud splash came from behind them. One firefighter had jumped into the pool, shocking everyone. The pool was covered with nitrogen gas. Jumping in was practically risking his own life. His teammates shouted from the poolside, but the thick fog made it impossible to see anything. Luckily, he soon surfaced with a drowning girl in his arms. He had noticed there was one extra pair of slippers by the pool and realized someone was still in the water. His gamble paid off. After being rescued, the girl also regained consciousness. Now, everyone had finally been saved. Just when the firefighters thought it was finally over, another emergency happened. The girl clutched her chest, said she couldn't breathe, coughed up a large amount of water, and collapsed.
She's dry drowning. Her airway spasming. Fluid's building up in her lungs.
Let's go. Her lungs are wet. I was just talking to her.
It's a delayed response. We're pulling people out of the pool.
It turned out to be a delayed reaction to drowning. Fortunately, the firefighters were still there. They immediately rushed her into the ambulance and took her to the hospital. Hopefully, she'll think twice before trying something like this again. Never use a laptop in bed. But this woman didn't believe it. While she was taking a shower, something unexpected happened. An old power cord sparked and set the bed on fire. Before long, the entire house was engulfed in flames. Firefighters quickly arrived at the scene. 2 female firefighters entered the house to search for survivors and soon found the woman unconscious in the bathroom from smoke inhalation. After waking her up, they quickly carried her outside. Meanwhile, another crew was ordered to fight the fire. They opened the hose line and soon put out the flames. Just as everyone thought the job was done, the rescued woman suddenly said,
Charlie!
Another possible victim inside, guys.
Name's Charlie. Repeat.
Charlie.
The firefighters' hearts sank. If someone was still in there, they were probably already cooked. The team prepared for the worst. Then, they suddenly heard faint whimpering from inside the house.
Oh my God, it's a kid.
Charlie!
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 Charlie! Charlie! Charlie!
Guys, stop.
Following the sound, they quickly located a pile of clutter in the corner.
Dibs on the puppy.
You can't call dibs on the puppy.
I just did. Dibs on that puppy.
The firefighters rescued the dog. The crowd was deeply moved. When the woman saw Charlie safe in the firefighter's arms, tears filled her eyes. She took Charlie back and repeatedly thanked the firefighter who rescued her dog. The 2 female firefighters standing nearby were left speechless. After all, they were the ones who had saved her life. So why was she only thanking the one who saved the dog?
That stuff's not gonna fly when we're running this place. Next time, we save the puppy.
This woman claimed her mansion was about to burn down, but when firefighters arrived, she made a strange request they were not allowed to use water to put out the fire. The firefighters were stunned. If they couldn't use water, were they supposed to blow the fire out with their mouths?
Yes.
It turned out that she had spent all her savings renovating the house, planning to run a family hotel business with her sister. But on the very first day after the renovation, her sister accidentally set the kitchen on fire while cooking. To stop the entire house from being destroyed, firefighters quickly connected a hose and carried it inside. However, a neighbor suddenly drove past.
Do you not see your neighbor's house is on fire?
Ignoring the firefighters' warnings, he drove directly over the hose. The hose was damaged. The firefighters inside were left without water. Without water, how could they put out the fire? Were they really going to blow it out? Luckily, they had fire extinguishers with them, so they could only use those for the moment. The firefighters prepared for the worst. They agreed that if the fire became too dangerous, they would retreat immediately and never take unnecessary risks. They carefully opened the kitchen door, but what they saw inside completely shocked them.
I've seen campfires that were bigger.
The firefighters were speechless. Was this tiny flame really worth calling the firefighters for?
You're lucky it was a fire we could put out in one blast, Gibson. So were you.
Excuse me?
I told you to secure the line.
But just one day later, the firefighters received another call from the same woman. Her sister refused to give up cooking and tried again. This time, she really burned down the kitchen. Luckily, the woman escaped quickly and only inhaled some smoke. But her sister wasn't so lucky. She was trapped on the other side of the kitchen. The firefighters knew they had to put out the flames before they could rescue her. They sprayed the fire with water and finally managed to extinguish it. But suddenly, the fire exploded back to life. A wave of intense heat rushed straight toward them. Everyone was shocked. They quickly grabbed the hoses and started fighting the flames again. But something was wrong. The fire seemed almost impossible to put out, as if it wasn't afraid of water at all. The experienced firefighters quickly discovered the reason. The gas line was still open. With gas continuously flowing, the fire could restart at any moment, so they sent a team to find the main gas shutoff valve. But suddenly, strange cracking sounds came from the next room. They carefully opened the door and saw wine bottles on the shelf exploding, one after another like missiles. The extreme heat from the fire had caused the bottles to burst.
I'm gonna die! Get me out of here, please!
The exploding glass was extremely dangerous and could cut through their protective equipment. However, knowing the fire could return at any moment, she decided to take the risk. She covered her head and ran through the dangerous area. The woman's sister said a broken wine bottle had hit her leg, and she couldn't walk. She quickly bandaged her wound and stopped the bleeding. Then, using a tray and her body as a shield, protected her pass through the extremely dangerous wall. But despite their careful protection, something still went wrong.
Oh no, she inhaled some gas! Go! Guys, get ready, we're coming out hot!
The sister suddenly stopped breathing. The woman couldn't believe what was happening. She cried and begged the firefighters to save her sister. But the rescue became extremely difficult. The breathing tube couldn't be inserted, and the breathing equipment wasn't working. Seeing her sister's face slowly turn blue, the firefighters knew they had to act fast. They needed to bypass the blockage and create another way for her to breathe. But the result was not good. Her sister still wasn't breathing, and the woman was losing hope. However, the firefighters refused to give up. They kept performing CPR again and again. Then, finally, a miracle happened.
Okay, we got her! Chest right, she's breathing!
Her sister was saved. The woman stayed beside her, filled with happiness after almost losing her forever. Although the newly renovated house was destroyed, the most important person was still alive. Hopefully, after her sister recovers, she will never step into the kitchen again. 2 firefighters were trapped by terrifying blue flames, but their teammates could only stand far away. No one dared to step forward and rescue them. These blue flames were extremely dangerous. Once they touched something, they were almost impossible to put out. Just moments earlier, a tanker truck crashed into a car and flipped over. When firefighters arrived, they immediately rushed to rescue the badly injured driver. But during the rescue, they noticed something strange. There was clearly no fire at the scene, yet they felt like they were standing inside an oven. The heat was unbearable, as if they could be burned alive at any moment. Suddenly, one firefighter started jumping around and screaming in pain as if something terrifying was on his leg. Everyone was confused. What exactly was happening? Luckily, one firefighter realized what was going on and immediately told them to turn off the headlights on the fire truck. Then, an unbelievable scene appeared. The firefighter's body was covered in terrifying blue flames. Fortunately, the fire was still small, and they quickly put it out with a foam extinguisher. But the real danger was just beginning. The blue flames were spreading rapidly and had already turned into a huge wall of fire. 2 firefighters and the injured driver were trapped inside. One firefighter immediately tried to bring over a water hose, but he was quickly stopped. It turned out this was an alcohol fire. Using water would only make the flames spread faster. They immediately called for backup and requested a foam truck to put out the fire. But even at full speed, the foam truck would need 10 minutes to arrive. Looking at how fast the flames were spreading, the trapped firefighters might not last that long. The trapped firefighters soon discovered a gap in the back of the tanker truck. They could escape through it, but they quickly gave up this rare chance. Because they could escape, but what about the injured driver lying on the ground? As firefighters, they couldn't leave an injured person behind. Now, their only hope was their teammates outside. They hoped they could find a way to save them quickly, but the teammates could only stand far away, afraid to get closer. The situation was becoming worse. The extreme heat had already started melting their boots, and the air around them became unbearably hot. Every breath felt like their lungs were burning. If this continued, they wouldn't just be burned by the flames. They could die from severe lung damage caused by the heat. But even after all this time, the firefighters outside still couldn't come up with a rescue plan. Finally, one firefighter made a decision. They had no choice but to take the risk. They decided to drive the fire truck straight through the flames. Whether it worked or not, they had to try. The fire truck drove directly over the raging blue flames.
Grab the other side. Come on, we gotta move!
All right, on me. 1, 2, 3.
You guys, faster! Move it!
Come on. 1, 2, 3. Bring him in. All right, everybody on. Got it. We're on.
Working together, they finally helped the 3 trapped people escape from the sea of fire. Thanks to the quick rescue, none of the firefighters were injured.
A deer crashed into the driver's cabin, leaving the firefighters stunned. They hurriedly rushed to rescue the person inside, only to find that the deer's antler had pierced the female driver's abdomen.
Oh my god, this is the worst!
The paramedic asked for her name.
We're doing introductions right now.
She quickly changed the subject, remarking on how lucky she was that both firefighters and medical personnel were present today.
Look, there are antlers inside my body.
They needed to rescue her quickly.
Can you turn that way to protect your eyes for me?
Face the deer.
Face me, look at me.
Using hydraulic pliers, the firefighters pried open the car door as the paramedics stabilized her wound as they prepared to saw off the deer's antler. One firefighter mentioned that it was just muscle spasms, reassuring her that the deer was already dead. But the driver worried that if such an incident happened again, the firefighter assured her that it wouldn't happen and that she was imagining the worst.
I don't think you can tell the person who's connected to a deer via its antlers plunged in her stomach that she's catastrophizing.
Okay, well, that is